everyone. Welcome back to the Heartland Mamas. I'm Murray Briel.
And I'm Heidi Henry, coming to you from our studio at the edge of the Great Red Divide in Marseilles, Illinois, bringing you the Iowa Caucuses.
Be sure to find out all about the caucuses and all of our shows on Demcast USA.
And at heartlandmamas.com. Like, follow,
subscribe,
share.
We look forward to having you join us. So when we talk about coming from the edge of the Great Red Divide, Iowa is lots of red divides. There's these Democratic pockets all across the state.
Yes.
And due to the time that we've spent in Iowa and the friendships that we've made, we went out to southwestern Iowa.
We were in Montgomery and Adams counties, which is really usually very red, but has had an amazing rise in progressivism and Democratic outreach.
One of the things that we've talked about many times is Democrats that were there didn't even know there were other Democrats. They almost felt ashamed. And we've mentioned that before in different areas of the country.
I don't know, ashamed, but more isolated.
Not willing to put out signs, express their views, talk to their neighbors. So the Southwest Iowa Democrats have done an amazing job, and we're going to actually do a special show just on these fantastic women who've shifted the dynamic in Southwest Iowa.
It's been a paradigm shift out there.
It really has.
Witnessing that. My husband's family comes from that part of Iowa, and to see the ideology shifting to a more people-oriented and less corporation-oriented ideology has been amazing. And I think where they really came from their deep roots. So.
Now, Heidi and I both live in Illinois, clearly, and our primary is like most of the primaries in the country. You walk into a booth, you pick your candidate, secret ballot.
Yep.
They tabulate the votes.
You go over a long span of time.
And there's a whole bunch of problems with all other states' voting plans. So before you start jumping on Iowa and what happened, we're going to debunk some stories that you may have heard, some pundits' opinions, and let you know what really happened. Together, we observed 5 precincts in Iowa in 2 different counties. Mm-hmm. Those precincts ranged from, how many was in your one of your precincts?
100 people, but only 18 showed up.
So we had rooms full of 18 people, and we had rooms full of 100 people that we watched. So it wasn't just that we wanted to be there to watch it, because so many people report about it. We wanted to see what goes into it. So Heidi and I spent 3 days there.
Prior to the caucus,
to get to know what these Democratic chairs, these precinct captains, these people do to pull this off.
And I had been in contact, and Murray had been in contact with these great groups for the last, I'd say, year plus, watching them prepare for this caucus. And they have put about 16 months of training in to get about an hour of time correct.
So everybody knows how I love history. Mm-hmm. So let's go back to 2016.
Oh, boy.
A caucus in Iowa. Now, they struggled then, and the biggest reason was not that there was anything wrong with the procedure or the results, but because there was controversy, they implemented different procedures. So the caucus used to be, you stand next to the sign or the group supporting the candidate you want. Mm-hmm. Everybody raises their hand. The chair comes around and counts everyone in that group and makes a note of it. Then they do a realignment, and you move to the second group if your group isn't viable.
You have to have 15% of the people in the room
choose a particular candidate.
And if you have 14%, your group is not viable, and you have to choose a different candidate.
Yeah, you have to be able to find someone else to do. So then you would go to your second group if your candidate wasn't viable, or you could persuade people to come to your group. You could talk to them.
Hey, neighbor, this is why I support.
You gotta come support Andrew Yang. Yeah. And then they did a final count, and it continued to go from there. So because it went so late into the night, and there were 2 candidates, they put some restrictions on it. So there was only 2 realignments.
Right.
But they also put safety valves in place. And that included cards.
Paper ballots,
where you put, had a one-on-one part with your information and your choice. And on the back was a 2 in a different color with your information and choice. So when you went to the first group, once you settled in, you were given your card. And they said, please only write on the first, fill out this information, and put your choice of the group that you're in. Mm-hmm. Once that was done, everyone held on to their ballots.
Now, even if your group wasn't viable, the group I was in Nodaway, Iowa, population 90, 100 people that can come and vote. 18 people showed up.
Mayor Shipley, thank you for a lovely stay. It was wonderful.
It was wonderful. And your beautiful arts and crafts home. I just loved it. So we had one group for Bernie Sanders that wasn't viable. There was only 2 people. So if you do the math, they didn't reach their 15% viability. But their paper ballot still counted. It still counted. It didn't count as a viable group. They ended up moving to another viable group. But that way, the Sanders campaign knew that in Nodaway, Iowa, there was 2 people that were supporting of Bernie Sanders. Now, that was the only not viable group. And they went to another viable group to be counted for delegates. But every first choice was counted.
So keep that in mind. Everyone goes to they've had their discussions, they've done their talking, persuading, everyone goes to their group.
And every single viable group that was there went over and talked to these 2 young men to get them to change groups. And there was no fighting. There was just, this is why my candidate is so great and you should come with us. That was it.
So it's a really truly amazing process. Mm-hmm. And the biggest takeaway is not just that it was a communication and a share, is that the Iowa Democratic Party, the IDP, had put so much time and effort into making the system more transparent, mm-hmm. Making it more beneficial for candidates.
There's a 3-factor authentication process before,
even in collecting the first vote total that is reported.
Yeah.
So even if your group isn't viable, like Heidi was giving her example, that still counted, and Bernie Sanders' campaign still knows that they had the 2 votes there. So that's one whole set of numbers. The next set of numbers is your second choice. So you realign, you mm-hmm. move to another group, and you can see, and then they ask you to write down your second choice.
Now, if your first group was viable, you
cannot move again.
You can't leave. You can't change. If your group was unviable, if it was less than 15%, then you can choose a different candidate. Or you can choose to walk out, or you can choose to be undecided. That's how a caucus works.
So what happens is everybody finishes up. We know in the precincts that we are in who does what. So Heidi and I had an idea of that part of the state where things were going.
Right.
But then when they're done, everyone leaves, and then the precinct captain
and secretary
report in the information. So
the tallies were started, the paperwork was started and done. Like, people were still there and able to view the process. Everything there is done. It's like everything is out in the open. So there's no cloak and dagger.
We were in an auditorium, a cafeteria, and a gym.
Yeah.
There was no hidden secret rooms
at the community center.
Yeah.
There was no secret rooms. There was no secret ballots.
Anyone could come up and look at anyone could come up and ask a question. Mm-hmm. They did it. People left. They finished their totals. Then they went to report in. Now we'd like to talk a little bit about the app that has caused a lot of problems. Mm-hmm. They had been training on this app for some time.
Right.
In fact, when we were talking to them on Saturday, they had a lovely
pizza party.
So we had a great time meeting a lot of folks there, and they were talking about how the app wasn't working. So the party chairs, so the Democratic chairs were on the phone with the Iowa Democratic Party saying, when is it? And
they're like, it'll come up. It'll be up and going just before the caucus. We don't want any
false data being it.
Right. We don't want
anything.
Early
so it's
data.
Going to go live right before the
right
caucus.
At 7 o'clock. That's what they were told. So right at 7 o'clock, the caucus begins, and it's not over instantaneously. It takes hours. I was there until after 9 o'clock.
Ours were quicker.
Were they quicker?
Our caucuses were quicker. We're probably done by about 8:30.
Okay, so an hour and a half. And I know we went back to our hotel, and I was amazed that people are like, well, it's 4 hours. It's because it was 11 o'clock. It's 4 hours since it was over. No.
It was only 2 hours.
It takes a couple of hours to get this right, because what happens is after the caucus is done, Then they have to button up everything and make sure everything's in an envelope with a security seal on it. So
with the results on the inside and all the voter preference cards on
the inside, and the results are printed on the outside.
And it is sealed and signed for, so no one can tamper with anything.
Right. And then and then they had to get on the app and start reporting. Well, they couldn't sign into the app. So then they started calling to Des Moines, Iowa.
And typically that's how it's always been done. They have a hotline set up.
Right.
Precinct captains call in, give their numbers, they record their numbers, but because they wanted to make it more transparent, because they wanted to improve the process, they did it this way. And I don't believe they staffed the hotline the way that they should have.
Well, the call volume was huge. The app crashed because there was so much volume. It never really did launch correctly. So then they went to the 3-factor identification, which is a picture of the envelope with the sealed data in it, emailed to Des Moines. Okay, and then there was a process where there was also the information taken by hand to Des Moines to be counted, the cards authenticated there.
So 3 ways. 1, they called in. 2, they sent a picture of the results completely sealed the way they had been finished.
Right.
To the state capitol. And 3, they had to physically drive them to the capitol.
Now, Des Moines was
2 hours away from where
we were. And, by the time you realize that you're into the backup plan, it's midnight, 2 a.m. And they're like, oh my God, I've been up for days trying to get ready for this. I cannot drive to Des Moines tonight. So they were gathering them. I was with the Adams County chair as she gathered the information from the caucus captains, because why send, there's
each individual, the captains who took over.
There's thousands of precincts. So why have thousands 1,700. So why have 1,700 cars go when there's 90 counties, and you can have 90 cars go and, and take the data up. So there was nothing underhanded, no cloak and dagger, no desire to have the results tampered with. So
what you really need to understand is that it wasn't boomers not knowing how to work the app,
because they'd all been trained.
Highly, incredibly insulting to hear. And I'm not even a boomer.
And
these people that were there were everywhere from their mid-20s to their 70s. And even those that were older had the app out, had their smartphone out. So you can't say that it was user error. You can't say that the caucus process itself was flawed.
So
we even have a book that shows exactly what the process is. Everyone followed it to the letter. They were instructed. It had been vetted. It was a great experience. So the problem came because of 2016 and all of the bad publicity and bad feelings about the Bernie Hillary face-off.
All the Russian bots getting people stirred up in 2016.
So they put in all of these extra safety measures
to make sure.
And now people are upset because they're verifying everything, knowing how important this is.
Because they're dotting their I's and crossing their T's. And people are pissed off about it,
And I get it. We are an instant society, and I understand the campaigns don't get to claim victory. Joe Biden's probably happy because he tanked. So he's probably happy that didn't really come out.
We saw it firsthand, and where I was at, Biden was very, very popular. So those people are probably in.
See, in mine, Biden wasn't as popular in my precincts.
Yeah,
Biden was I had a feeling he'd come in 4th or maybe even 5th because there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm in the 3 precincts I observed. He barely made the 15% threshold and didn't gain anybody further on.
Here's the problem with Biden's ground game out there. So we're going to go a little bit into the weeds on this. Biden counted on older voters. He sent mailers, and we saw this. He sent
based on age, determined the quantity of mailers received. If you were over 65, you got
over
countless
55.
Mailers
From Biden.
If you were under 55, you got 3.
Now, and here's the problem with having it at 7:00 at night on a Tuesday or on a Monday night in rural Iowa. Dark roads, gravel roads that are falling apart because they're not frozen properly any longer, snow on the ground, and older drivers that don't drive. Joe, yet another mistake in your ground game. It's like, and we keep seeing these mistakes from the Biden ground game. So no wonder you tanked, honey.
The Biden ground game was pretty sad. And it's interesting. We've got some observations about some of the other candidates that we were with. But I'll tell you, I was really curious as to why those folks chose Joe. And I'm like, so, why Joe?
Oh, my gosh, have I got a story to tell
and
you.
They feel like the only, and it was because he can beat them. And I said, so is there anything about his policy or what his expertise is in that really makes you... No. So I went to the Bernie group, and Bernie and Pete Buttigieg in Precinct 1, where I was, had big groups of people. Elizabeth Warren barely, she wasn't even viable.
Really, she
the
was
first
very
round.
viable. She was the second highest where I was at.
She wasn't even viable the first round.
So
the second round, she became viable with the Klobuchar split because Amy wasn't viable, so people split off.
And Klobuchar was viable by me.
And what's so funny is that you have these two groups, the Pete and the Bernie group, who are really and truly the epitome of centrist and progressive. And you've got equal numbers of people in both of these, right? Like, okay, so then I asked again, so what about it? I think he can beat him. Again, it was mostly the white male ideology.
Yes.
So I asked this one gentleman, I was asking the Bernie group, so why? And Bernie had a different opinion. The Bernie group is, it's time to bring it down. We are going to make change. The Bernie group was really excited. The Pete group was a little bit excited. The Biden group was on Quaaludes. Like, there wasn't a pulse among the 11 of them clinging to viability.
Yeah.
But this gentleman who's like, so he comes up to me, and he's a farmer. He's like 6'5", and he leans down to me and says, "You want to know why I picked Bernie?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I do." He said, "He's got 4 or 5 good more years." He goes. Wait, he started with, "I'm 86 years old."
Yeah.
Bernie's got 4 or 5 more good years. Biden doesn't. And he walked out. So that was it for...
Having met both of them, I think that they're both about the same. I think they're both going to go the same day. Anyway, but here in my group, we had a 6 for Biden, 5 for Warren, 4 for Klobuchar, 2 for Sanders, 3 for Buttigieg. And I want to tell you my Joe Biden story. There's a guy there that's in his 70s, and he's got like a pink flamingo on his little jaunty cap that he's wearing. I can't recall his name right now, but he gave me this whole long story about how it's time for a woman to lead. And he told me about his granddaughter-in-law and how she, kicked ass and took names, setting fence or something on his farm. She kept up with the boys, and it's time for a woman to lead. And then he went over and sat down because he told me he was Elizabeth Warren all the way. Then he got up and sat down with the Biden camp. I'm like, so
Did he know? Was he aware that he was sitting in the wrong group?
Yes, completely aware, because he decided that he didn't think it was time for a woman
to be president. After all, he told the woman reporter in the room
that it was not time for a woman to be president. And I said to him, he goes, because look at what happened in the last election. And I said,
Hillary won.
And I said that Hillary won by more than 3 million votes. And he's like, she did? And I said, yeah, she won the popular vote by, nearly 3 million votes. And I said, it was, Trumpfuckery, as Murray likes to say, that won the Electoral College. And he goes, well, that could happen again. Those are conservative states. And I said, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, those mistakes will never happen again. Hillary didn't go to those states. Believe me, whoever wins the Democratic nomination is going to be living in those states. That will never happen again.
To states, this is something I want to let our listeners know, is when they talk about the ground game in Iowa, it's so intensive. It is ridiculously labor intensive and expensive. So each precinct, and there's over 1,700, right? Each one has the candidates running, represented, but you need someone from the campaign or someone from the town someone from the precinct
to advocate for
to
your
advocate
candidate.
for your candidate. And I'm going to tell you why. Because if you don't have that, you don't have as much representation. Not from anything law-wise or
Yeah.
anything wrong, but it's up to you to make sure you have someone there
Okay, so
in every precinct who can advocate for you.
So where I was at, people had to drive up to 50 miles to get over to vote. Okay, so Biden picked a guy that lives on the very edge, like the furthest
no.
away, who is 70 and has cataracts and couldn't make it to advocate for Biden, but Biden still got the post. But I wanted to finish my synopsis on
sorry.
that. In the very end, people could not move past where I was at, the white savior complex, the white male savior complex. In the very end, when it came down to this one man,
I don't know if it was white. I think it was all male.
well, it was a very male thing, and I think I think that's what I got from the Buttigieg camp is they didn't feel a woman could win, so gay man was better than
Then straight old man.
than straight old man, and certainly better than ovaries. Dick was better than ovaries.
Way better.
So,
Yeah.
and pardon me for being blunt, but that's exactly how it came
Fear
down,
of the
and
vagina.
why Buttigieg is leading right now in Iowa is because straight white man too old, gay white man, okay, and I'm going to say white man again. Women, oh geez, even though 3 million votes positive, still, be afraid of the ovaries.
And I think the biggest
disappointing.
detriment to the women running right now is the thought that Hillary lost, and she did the Electoral College, but not the popular vote.
The popular vote,
And even the women who loved Hillary, right, or who
Yeah.
were pro Elizabeth Warren, and they really wrestled with whether or not a woman could win. And that's just because of the stupid societal stereotypes and the pressures placed upon them, that they believe these myths.
and you know what?
And we're all trying to find the candidate who is electable, who can beat him. As all of you go into the primaries,
electability means you have to have a penis. I swear to God, that's what that means.
as we head into New Hampshire peeps, listen up. Heidi and I are
I'm
firm
smoking
believers that you get behind who you align with.
Who you believe
your
in.
values align with.
Because-
who fits what you want, not who you think is going to win.
Because if you add up the centrist candidates and the progressive candidates, they're in a dead heat right
In
now.
Iowa, they are all 50-50. If you put Biden and Buttigieg with Warren and Sanders, the vote totals are equal. We
Even
are
if you add
split,
in the-
and I promise you,
Yeah.
of those folks that I talked to that chose the more centrist, there were only a few that were like, oh, those liberal ideas are just too crazy.
Never heard that.
Never. All of them wanted to be with Biden or with Bernie or Elizabeth, but they were afraid because we buy this stupid myth that the centrist is better.
But, and that's where the split is. I think definitely why Pete Buttigieg did better.
Absolutely. It's because he's not old and he's a centrist.
Well, and the thing is why Klobuchar didn't do very well because she is a woman. If you're a centrist, you've got the white male complex to begin with, and then add Amy Klobuchar as a
that's a
centrist
really
and a
good
woman.
thought.
I'll tell you what, pink flamingo hat guy
Represented exactly
the thing that the feminists like us,
that we're fighting all across the country.
we cannot get through to people like that. You cannot get through because
You're hit with it all the time.
It's
I mean, you have
colonialism.
Trump. You have every time you turn around, there's the questioning of whether a woman can do it, and this mentality of a progressive can do it. Oh no, we're getting scared. The country is progressive. If they weren't afraid, if we knew it would be elected, I would ask this question. So, we didn't have to run against Donald Trump. If you could choose one Democrat to be the president of the United States of this, group,
who would you choose?
Who would you choose?
I know who I would choose.
And overwhelmingly, with 3 to 1, was a progressive.
Yeah, it was a progressive. And furthermore, the latest poll that came out the other day was 68% of Americans that vote, 68% would vote for the Democrat, whoever that is, over Donald Trump.
Okay, so 68% of Democrats. That's quite a good number to start with.
Well, no, it was 68% of voters. I didn't mean Democrats. 68% of voters will vote Democrat in the next. No matter who it is.
Okay, so I would love to see another poll like that, and we will publish it from here to holy heaven. We have to get who we feel good about. Stop settling. Okay, you don't settle for
a centrist.
Was it you, or was it one of the lovely women that we were talking to that talked about you don't settle?
You don't settle.
You know, when you're looking for love and you're looking for the right man or woman or whatever, and you know you've got somebody and they're okay and you don't mind them, and is that what you want?
Don't settle.
Don't settle. Don't settle for average.
Oh my gosh, Murray, the other thing...
When you can have what you want.
The other thing I got from the centrists there was that Bernie and Elizabeth haven't said, or Yang, how they're going to pay for this. Yes, they have. Every single one of their health care and education plans have been outlined in detail on their pages, in the media, everywhere. You don't have to look hard, but you do have to read to find out that all of their plans are paid for. I'm sorry.
You're fine. No, I wanted to throw something in there. Go ahead.
Well, you know, you have to do a little bit of work and saying, oh, well, I heard on the news that there's no way to pay for it. Bullshit. There is ways to pay for it. It's on every single platform. I don't care if it's Steyer is a progressive, if it's Sanders, if it's Yang, if it's Warren. It's all there. But you actually have to get out your cheaters and read. Look, I will pull out mine and put them on so I can read with you. You know, seriously.
Maybe we'll read it out loud to you.
Would that help?
Time with Heidi
would that
and
help? Murray, I'm outraged that people would still think this. Shut off the damn cable news networks because they are news and opinion.
Think critically.
Yes.
Review your sources. Do some investigation. But most importantly, the thing the caucus taught me is that talk to your neighbors.
Yeah.
If you have neighbors that you know aren't really Republicans or aren't really Democrats, and you're talking to them, be like, hey, have you thought about the election? I'm really excited about Michael Crowner. He's running for state senate in the 49th. Maybe I will be like, hey, what's Michael all about? Talking to your neighbors is powerful. One of the things we noticed is this year they allowed surrogates for the candidates to be from outside of the state of Iowa and be the captains for the...
Advocate.
So if I'm Andrew Yang's person, I can go into precinct 1. I live in Dakota, but I can come in and I get a sticker that says, you know, observer.
Yeah.
And I can advocate before the voting starts for my candidate. I can pull people over and be like, come on, but my vote won't be counted.
My vote was not counted. I didn't have a vote.
And the people of Iowa were pretty uncomfortable and unhappy with that. Almost all of the precinct captains that we talked to felt that if you're not from Iowa, you shouldn't be able to...
That's because the caucuses were done in people's houses and neighborhood events.
But these are people who feel that way still.
Yeah.
And on one hand, I do understand, you know, the campaign. That's smart. And I get the Iowans. But I guess my point is I want to let you guys know how much talking to your neighbors has an effect.
Yeah.
It makes a difference. If you can talk to 3 people... 5 people in 1 week about a candidate that you believe in, imagine what could happen if one of those people talks to 5 more.
Well, and get a sign out in your yard, for God's sake. I mean, mine's been out there for a week now, actually my daughter's, because it does some talking for you. Be out there, wear your button, wear your shirt for your candidate, whatever it is. Let people know and open those conversations so that you can talk to people about it. I prefer talking person to person. I'll be out canvassing for my choice of candidates, which I'm not going to give on here. Well, Michael Crowner, yeah, and I wish he would be running in my district.
I know. He's running in mine.
I have the crappy, horrible Sioux Republican
Resin.
Who I ran against.
She's getting her butt kicked in the primary.
Good.
She's raised no money.
Oh, she's got money. What does she
need
to
enough.
Raise any?
Not she only has $300,000 on cash on hand.
She didn't have to spend anything in our race because I was an unfunded candidate.
Killed by Overweight. Anyway, sorry.
Well,
local politics.
More money. Yeah. So here's the thing that our takeaway from this is that The caucuses were done very above board. Go to thecaucuses.org for real-time results and understand that those results are going to get slow in getting to your phone or your desktop or your tablet because they're doing this three-way authentication.
Because of problems in the past, they wanted, or even misrepresentation of problems in the past.
Total
They did this
misrepresentation. We couldn't find any.
For security, they did this for validity. The people of Iowa who do this are volunteers, but they're not,
They didn't walk in off the street.
Right,
They've been working on this for over a year.
They've been trained through classes, through
online tutorials. They had to take a test to be certified.
This is some serious stuff. So before you say it's the old people that couldn't figure out how to use the app.
Wrong.
Before you say it's the app developer.
Oh, I sounded like
and
Trump
they're
there.
all hooked
Together.
into the political machine.
Wrong.
Nice. I like it. Before you blame the volunteers, well, they should be paying. It's a stupid, outdated system. No. What it shows is the power, this true, unbelievable power of grassroots organizing. It
Right.
talks about, you can flood the airways with 1,000 commercials, and we saw them, but the people that were in those caucuses were talking to their neighbors about who they thought was best.
Right.
Forget the rest of it.
Except for the county chairs who could not.
The county chairs didn't say who any of
We
their-
didn't know. We didn't know until that day, and I was really surprised that my county chair that I was shadowing that day walked over to, and I had no idea who she was in favor of. I was completely in the dark. I'm like, no, come on, tell me. She would not tell me because she didn't want to influence anybody else's vote. And that's why Murray and I don't often say who we favor. I mean, you all know that I'm a hardcore progressive and that there's some candidates I really don't like.
Equal opportunity destroyer.
Yes. And I want to
At
tell
least
you.
I am. She's so sweet.
Coming back from the caucuses,
She's just the sweetest.
there are a few people that I think need to just go home now. And that would be Michael Bennett. That would be Michael Bloomberg. That would be Delaney. That would be Gabbard.
Yep.
That would be Duval Patrick.
Yep.
That would be, I don't know about Tom Steyer because he's a progressive.
I like Tom.
And Andrew Yang also didn't do real well. But
For being with zero name recognition, even less than
Well, you know
Buttigieg,
I love him.
He got delegates, man.
Hey, you know I'm a
Way
support-
more than the last ones you read off.
Yeah. You know that that I really love Andrew Yang and his ideas. So I just maybe not time to go home, but time to either really step up your ground game.
And I think it's going to be a big difference coming to New Hampshire, and then we have the real
South
key is
Carolina.
when Biden will go away is South Carolina. I don't think he'll go
Buttigieg
away
is
before
gonna
then.
struggle there. I think Buttigieg will really struggle mightily there because
So the Super Tuesday will be really interesting.
well, Super Tuesday comes after,
Right.
and then Illinois is after Super Tuesday. But there's so many things to consider, and there's no bad candidates except for Tulsi Gabbard. We all know,
And
that,
Michael Bloomberg.
we all know that I'll hate I'd rather have a President Bloomberg than a Gabbard any day of the week.
Dude, yeah. I'd
any
rather
day.
have a Gabbard rather than a Trump any day of the week. Oh, come on. Come on now. You know what? Oh, wait, no, they're probably about equally.
They're
evil.
about the same. I don't know why she's not a Republican. Honest to God. So we have enough Dino Democrats.
And it's time to have people who really represent the party. So we hope you've
Party
enjoyed
and the
our
people.
recap. We hope we dispelled some of the myths about hankiness or incompetence or
but candidate partisanship. There was none of that. None of it.
So we really want you to understand this is so above
No cloak and
board.
dagger.
Granted, we only saw 5 precincts. We were in
Very
the
rural.
rooms for 5 precincts.
We were in the room where it happened.
Yes, we were. For out of 1,700. But what we saw, and every one of the precinct committee people that we talked to, which had to have been 60 different precinct people, were all well prepared, ready for this, and take the responsibility very
And
seriously.
I do want to touch on something before we sign off, Murray. As Murray and I made a point that from the time we entered Iowa at Davenport all the way until we got out to Nodaway, we asked people, everybody we met, are you caucusing Monday night? Are you caucusing Monday night? Here is what we found is that, there was, it was only
a few Republicans.
Because they don't caucus. But we ran into people who had to work. We ran into people that didn't know that there was a caucus for all the
work
TV
that
and
was
media
done.
that's out there. But a lot of people just couldn't make it. It was a really poor time of day.
There were several people
So-
and then afterwards were like, "Did you get to caucus?" No, I was working.
I had to
wasn't able
work.
go.
Yeah, and but they were huge supporters of whatever candidate, and we found this more with women than men across the board. But Iowa, the thing you need to do is you need to make this more inclusive of people who have a whole other world that doesn't involve the caucus, and that's where I don't think that this was taken into consideration. And I know they tried to do it electronically and couldn't get the matrix to work. So based on all the problems, I don't know that they'll ever have a caucus again. We were so glad that we got to see the process and totally, loved the community, sense of community from that.
Amazing.
But dark roads, country roads, gravel roads at night, in the winter, not a good place for people who are, maybe don't have a car, that don't have transportation, that don't have a driver's license, that can't get there because they can't see, they have to work, whatever. All of those things come into play. So when you have 18% in the caucus I was at, when you have such a low turnout of registered voters, something's not working.
Now, I will say on the flip side, the work that, and I agree with Heidi 100%, but all of the work that Southwest Iowa did, I saw pay off. When at the precincts that I was at, we registered 20 new voters that day.
Lots of new people.
So while Heidi is 100% right, they need to work on a way to include those folks who are not able to meet that deadline.
So
we also have to give them mad props for building awareness and getting people out to register day of.
5 of the 18 people that came to caucus where I was at in Little Notaway, and now that's very, very, very rural, and I went very, very rural intentionally because I wanted to see what the messaging was, what the strategy was out there. But 5 of them were new or changed parties.
So,
voters,
I guess
change parties.
overall my biggest takeaway is the impact you can have when you talk. Not post something on Facebook.
Oh, stop with those stupid posts on Facebook.
It's so funny because one of the chairs said that she has a really good friend who's her neighbor and they get along fine unless they're on Facebook because he's a Republican. But in face-to-face, they're okay. So use your voice. Talk to your neighbors. Let them know that this is important to you. And if we can get 10% more people who aren't interested to be engaged, we can take the White House.
We can take the White House and the Senate and keep the House. And we can put our country back on track. I'm not watching the proceedings today because I know that our very guilty president is going to get away with everything. And I'm personally very disturbed by the thoughts of what's going to happen with this completely unleashed person.
Which we will go into for another show. And we also are going to do a series for Heartland folks or nationwide groups who have turned around areas that were red, who have activist groups who've made an impact in your area.
Yeah.
We're going to start featuring those, as well as our Slimeball Senator sections, where we highlight and show you how to help.
Joni Ernst, we're coming for you.
Mitch McConnell, Susan Collins, Martha McSally, Cory Gardner, the list goes on. So tune in very soon for those. We're going to have a lot of great shows coming up. Like, subscribe, share, reach out to us. If you're an amazing group, let us know.
Yeah, we'd like to come and see you. So,
all right. So thank you so much. And we will talk to you soon. Heartland Mamas.
MAMAS.com. Bye.